Hi, my name is Dr Caroline Bowman and I'm the head of school here at Bangor Psychology. Thank you for attending my talk today and welcome to Psychology at Bangor University. My aim today is to introduce you into some of the reasons why you might wish to study psychology in the first place, explore some of the careers that you might undertake if you are to study a degree in psychology, and then to give you a unique insight into some of the really exciting things going on within the School of Psychology at Bangor. So first of all, welcome to Bangor University. It's a truly beautiful university sitting right in the heart of Snowdonia. Here you can see a view inside our internal quad in the main arts building that some of our students refer to as Hogwarts. On the next slide, you will see why. So here you can see our main arts building, and you can see this building from Bangor Mountains, which looks right across the city. Sitting right next to the main arts building, you might see the twin white buildings on your left. This is the Brigantia building, and this is the heart of psychology at Bangor. Here in this building, we undertake key research. We have key tutorial seminars, and we also have key staff members who will teach you and research with you at your time, during your time in Bangor. What I want to do today is talk a little bit about the 4 core programs that we offer undergraduate students in psychology at Bangor. Each of these 4 programs are accredited by the British Psychological Society, or the BPS for short, as you might see up on my screen there. BPS accreditation is very important. Without BPS accreditation, it's very difficult to go on and become a professional psychologist here in the United Kingdom. And so your journey into becoming a professional psychologist really starts with this accreditation. And as I said, each of our 4 core programs hold this accreditation. We do have some alternative programs. These are our joint honours degrees. So you may study psychology, but share modules with another school, for example. Those programs are not BPS accredited, but there's loads of information about those programs, should you be interested in exploring those options. So our 4 main programs then are our Bsc in Psychology, our Bsc in Psychology with Clinical and Health Psychology, our Bsc in Psychology with Forensic Psychology, and our Bsc in Psychology with Neuropsychology. Each of these programs lasts for 3 years full-time, but you are able to study part-time if that better suits your needs. What I want to do now is talk you through each of these programs with a bit of an insight into how we see psychology in action in the real world, the careers that these kinds of programs can lead to, and then an insight into what we offer with regard to these programs here at Bangor. So let's start with our Bsc Psychology then. So wherever we look in the world, we can see psychology in action. Psychology is a study of the human mind and behaviour, and none more so than recently have we seen mind and behaviour in action than during the pandemic. So we've seen, for example, panic buying. We've seen some real concerns about whether or not we should be protecting ourselves with masks or with vaccinations. We've seen all sides of humanity and human behaviour during the pandemic. And this, for psychology, has led to some really interesting studies and observations on human behaviour. For example, in how to change behaviour so that should there be another wave of the pandemic, people don't panic buy. How to help people make the right decision about whether or not to be given a vaccination or whether or not to wear protective clothing. So some really important and really powerful examples of psychology in action within the real world. And psychology is a pretty fascinating topic. The reason for that is psychology can take you into many different career paths. So this graphic here I'm showing you is from the BPS website, so the British Psychological Society website, and you can become a psychologist, a professional psychologist in one of several different domains. And you'll see here that we've mapped our degrees onto many of these key domains. For example, you'll see health and clinical there, forensic, neuropsychology. We will also, of course, train you to become a psychologist in any of these fields. So whilst it might not look like potentially that we would cover occupational psychology or sport and exercise psychology or counselling psychology, the degree at Bangor University in psychology or in any of our 4 core programs will equip you with the right skills to go into any of these different disciplines. Of course, the really amazing thing about studying psychology is that you don't need to use your degree just to become a professional psychologist. It will open doors in many different pathways. For example, in becoming a teacher, to go into medicine, to work in human resources, and so on. So the Bsc in Psychology is a really fascinating subject. It's our most diverse programme. It gives you an opportunity to encounter as many different topics as you could possibly want to cover. And research in Bangor Psychology is just so fantastic. It has such depth and such diversity. One such topic, should I say, is the research conducted by Dr. Manon Jones and Dr. Marketa Karavolas. Here in the picture on your left, you will see Dr. Manon Jones, and she's a human language and development researcher here at Bangor. During the pandemic, Dr. Jones and Dr. Karavolas created, designed and implemented a programme of remote instruction of language and literacy. This was an incredible programme because, of course, with children not being able to go to school, there was the potential that those children may really struggle then with the development of academic skills, particularly literacy, so reading and language. The programme implemented by Dr. Jones and Dr. Karavolas has investigated alternative methods of providing online instruction for children with the key incentive of making sure that those language skills, those literacy skills are maintained so that even if children are out of school, they are able to reintegrate back into school with as much as, without any of those skills degrading. One of the really key cool things about the research conducted by Manon and Marketa is that it involved a huge number of different stakeholders. So this research was funded in part by the Welsh Government, and of course led by Bangor Psychology researchers, but that also includes expertise from educational psychology, language development, research assistants from our undergraduate pool, as well as from our postdoctoral pool. And all of these individuals have been working with parents, with teachers, and over 200 children to explore and investigate the best way of retaining these literacy skills as a result of the pandemic. This research has really led to some really significant regional and national impact. The programme in itself is called the Real Project, and you can certainly find out loads more information about that if you're interested by looking online. Moving on then, our second BSc is in psychology with clinical and health psychology. And very recently, we've really seen kind of clinical and health psychology in action, and in particular with regard to the media and the media's influence on our behaviour and on our minds and our brains. We've seen some really sad and deeply challenging news in the media over the last few years. For example, we've seen the murder of George Floyd. We've seen the way that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been treated. We've also seen how Caroline Flack has committed suicide, and there's been a lot of speculation around whether or not the media played a key role in that happening. So these real key challenges for our future. So understanding mental health better, understanding how we might break down institutional racism is something that psychology can play a critical role in. Deeply challenging, deeply moving, but deeply important for you as the future psychologists to tackle some of the most distressing issues that face us in society. So becoming a clinical or a health psychologist then can lead you to work in a number of different settings and in a number of different ways. For example, you may work in a psychiatric unit in a hospital. You may work one-to-one therapy, for example, art therapy with children who have suffered trauma or abuse. You may work one-to-one with adults who have suffered trauma or abuse, or who might be experiencing real challenges as a result of a diagnosis of a terminal illness. Health psychologists will also work to try to promote healthy eating, a reduction in alcohol and drug intake, and will also work with people to try and prevent behaviours that might lead to other illnesses, such as cancer, diabetes, and so on. So clinical and health psychology as a career is vast and varied and leads to a number of extremely exciting possibilities and opportunities. Here at Bangor, we have really flourishing clinical and health psychology research. And here I'm showing you a picture of Professor Helen Henningham. And Professor Henningham's work has been extremely impactful in low to middle income communities, starting off in Jamaica with her teacher training program to prevent violence against children in primary schools. And so successful has this teacher training program been that it is now rolling out across the world in low to middle income communities. Extremely important and extremely impactful work. Moving on then, psychology with forensic psychology. So a degree that we have seen which has increasing popularity over the last few years, I guess in part fueled by media representation of criminal behaviour. Deeply interesting. In order to prepare for this talk, I did a quick scan of Netflix and Prime to see what was on offer with regard to criminal behaviour. And as you can see here behind me on the slide, you can see that there are, and these are small screen captures of the catalogue of programs in psychopathy that you could explore in Netflix and Prime. There's something deeply engaging about understanding criminal behaviour. Not least, there's the notoriety and the celebrity of people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes. And that in itself is fascinating to understand why we as humans engage with that. But it's also deeply fascinating to understand why we as humans connect with others who do not act in a criminal way. In a way, it helps bond us, it helps gives us a sense of cohesion. But criminal behaviour, of course, in itself is extremely problematic. We have got social norms to adhere to, and anybody that acts outside of those social norms needs to be in some way reined in. Here at Bangor, we have done some really incredible work with regard to forensic psychology. And forensic psychology can lead to a number of different career paths. For example, you might find yourself working in a prison. You might find yourself working in a rehabilitation centre. Or it might be that you're working in, for example, a halfway house for individuals who have come out of the prison system and who are reintegrating back into society. Extremely interesting line of work, an extremely challenging line of work, and an extremely competitive line of work as well. Here at Bangor, some recent research with leanings towards forensic psychology have come from our clinical psychology unit, led by Dr. Helen Bichard. Here you can see pictured along with Dr. Rudy Kutzer in the middle and Dr. Chris Saville to your left there in the hat. The research by Dr. Helen Bichard has had extremely important parliamentary impact with regard to the domestic abuse bill. So Dr. Bichard's work has centred on non-fatal strangulation during domestic abuse and enabling victims of non-fatal strangulation to be supported and to be recognised in a way that does not mean that their partner, their abuser, can claim that rough sex has been all that has happened to that particular victim. Here you can see on the screen some screen captures, both of Dr. Bichard's published research at the top there, just under the title, And further down the screen there, you can see that the news story has been so valuable, it's been picked up by media across the UK. And here's an excerpt of some of that information from within the independent newspaper. Extremely important, deeply impactful work. Our fourth and final degree is our BSc in Psychology with Neuropsychology. Again, an extremely fascinating field. So neuropsychology is all about the study of the brain and how the brain can influence our behavior. There are so many different examples of this in the media and in the popular press that you probably will have connected with it without potentially even realizing it. One such example is in the taking of recreational drugs, such as, for example, MDMA, or you may have heard of it being labeled as ecstasy previously. So this is an illegal recreational drug, and it's often used by people going to parties. It's a hallucinogenic drug. It gives people a sense of altered reality, but it also gives people a sense of love and feelings of connectedness. And it's an extremely popular but illegal drug in the UK at the moment. Of course, it's very important for us to understand what recreational drugs might do when they get into our brains. And there's a whole bunch of research on that, and some really important research in the last few years has shown that actually hallucinogenic drugs like MDMA are actually very effective in treating some forms of depression, providing that that depression is also treated with some talking therapy, so some form of counselling. Now, I'm in absolutely no way advocating that you should ever self-medicate MDMA if you're experiencing depression. But what I am saying is that the understanding of the brain and how it might affect behaviour is being advanced all of the time, and our understanding of how drugs that we introduce from the external world on our behaviour is really beginning to become far more advanced. Careers in neuropsychology can take many varied forms in the same way as all of the other types of psychology I've described today. For example, neuropsychologists will work in hospitals, they will work in universities and in research institutes. And the neuropsychologists, I think it's fair to say, get to work with some of the very best gadgets and toys within psychology research. For example, on the screen here, you can see right in the middle an ERP cap that's reading brainwaves. Right at the very top left there, you can see, yes, sorry, I'm so sorry. Yes, right at the very top left there, you can see somebody being put into an fMRI scanner to have their brain scanned. And at the bottom, just next to my right shoulder, you will see somebody who's having transcranial magnetic stimulation. All of these actually at Bangor University as well. So some really exciting career paths for neuropsychologists to work with people potentially who've had brain trauma, and potentially people who have neurological disorders or psychological disorders, or people who have taken some toxic chemicals and there has been an impact upon their brain as a result of that. Here at Bangor, research in neuropsychology and neuroscience is absolutely flourishing in the same way as it is within all of the domains I've described this morning. And I'm introducing you here to Dr. Caroline Bowman. So the biggest picture, the lady in the glasses right there. So Dr. Caroline Bowman's research is so fantastic. She's really interested in the neuroscience of social interaction. We've spoken a few times today about how humans connect in a social world. We spoke about this a little for the forensic psychology as well. So humans really connect with one another. But what is the neuroscientific basis of that? And how then do we engage as humans with things that are not human? And so a lot of Dr. Calderwine's work, and here you can see one of her PhD students in the black next to the white robot there, is exploring exactly that. So how do children, and you can see in the picture just next to my shoulder there, interact with robots, and what changes that? Do robots have to appear more intelligent? Do they have to appear more empathic in order for you to engage more fully with them? And Dr. Calderwine is extremely interested in the biological, the neuroscientific basis of how we interact socially with others. With regard to robots, it's so important because it has significant implications for the development of robots, and in particular within healthcare and education settings. So research with pretty critical impact. So that was my whistle-stop tour around the BSc programs in Bangor Psychology. But one thing I did just want to mention was that here in Bangor, we are a fully bilingual community, which is super exciting and leads to some really amazing research opportunities and also teaching opportunities. Now, of course, to study in Bangor, you certainly do not need to be able to speak Welsh at all. But if you do, I just want to let you know that you're able to in Bangor Psychology. We offer a number of credits, that's modules in the medium of Welsh. We can offer you a Welsh speaking personal tutor, a Welsh dissertation project. There are bursaries to study in the medium of Welsh, and you can leave us with a Welsh language certificate that can really feed into your employability. So as I say, you absolutely do not need to be able to speak Welsh in order to study in Bangor Psychology, but there are loads of opportunities for you if you do. So what's next for you then? So now, I mean, you have a super big, super important decision to make. It's time to reflect and to ask questions. And I'm hoping you'll engage with all of the resources that we have available for you, particularly with regard to the modules that we have as options for you, particularly with regard to pastoral care. Here in Bangor Psychology, the support that we offer our students is one of our hallmarks, and something that I, as head of school, am extremely motivated by. Our health and well-being of students is one of my top priorities. So please engage with all of those resources in order to help you make a good decision about where to study. And of course, if you do have any questions, you're very welcome to contact us. There's a number of different ways. We have an email address, psychology@bangor.ac.uk. You can find us on Twitter and also Instagram and TikTok as well. It's been really wonderful talking to you today, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit through this presentation. I really do hope to be able to see you in person at some point soon in Bangor Psychology. It's a fantastic place to study, and I'm sure that you will feel that too if you decide to come and join us. Thank you so very much for your time. Take care. Bye.